Well, it is that time again when people gather in front of their televisions and cringe. Talking about Shark Week, of course, on the Discovery Channel. Some folks here in the Coastal Bend are paying extra close attention.
Yeah, I was watching the shows last night. Well, this evening, the Hart Research Institute, who has been featured on the series before, dived into Shark Week by hosting a viewing party at Brewster Street Ice House. Our Taylor Alanis joins us with the details. Taylor.
And what a way to dive into Shark Week it is. Tonight's celebration was a family fun event where kids could learn about the giant underwater predators and also sink their teeth into something tasty. The event kicked off at 6 with shark-themed booths and giveaways. Researchers demonstrated shark tagging and how to identify different species. The Hart Research Institute has appeared in 4 seasons of Shark Week, including an episode where they tagged short-fin mako sharks in the Gulf of Mexico and the Pacific. Researchers say the goal of the week-long series is to highlight how important sharks are to our ecosystem.
They exhibit something called top-down control, so without sharks, we don't have fish to eat. Other predators would eat the same fish we like to eat. There would be additional algae on the coral reefs.
Researchers say one of the biggest misconceptions about sharks is that they want to attack people. Experts say sharks bite humans out of curiosity. That's why after they bite, they decide you aren't on the menu and swim off. And Shark Week organizers say this year's event had the biggest turnout with several hundred people in attendance. I don't know about you guys, but I'm still scared of sharks.
Yeah, because that exploratory bite can still do a lot of damage.
Yeah, I want to stay off their menu.
Yes,
that's
me
for
too.
sure.